When you went into the studio to make this album, American Gangster, there was a buzz about you. Jay-Z's back. He's creating music.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to get involved. People that hadn't been with you for a while, like Diddy.
Yeah.
Comes to you and wants to be the executive producer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you look at him and say, man, you
can't executive produce an executive producer.
What'd you say to him? What was the conversation?
That's what I said. You can't executive producer. But he said, man, you're the greatest, all right? But even Michael Jordan had a coach.
That's what he said.
Yeah, he's great.
And you listened to him.
Yeah. What happened was I was going in the house. I was right in front of my house. Yeah. And I got this phone call from him. He was like, come by the studio. And I'm like, man, I'm looking at the door, and I'm like, I could just go in the house and be done with it, you know, but I'm one of them people that believe everything happens for a reason. Right. He called me. He's never called me to come to the studio before.
Not ever in your life?
Mm-mm. So I pull away from my house. I head over to the studio. I get there. He's playing all these lush samples and all this 70s soul music, which relates straight to the movie, because that's the backdrop for this album that I made is set against these soul samples, you know, these things that I've heard growing up. So he's playing all these records, and they're amazing. And I'm like, what are you doing? So I'm putting the Hitman back together. You know, he got LV and Sean C., you know, his whole group. Right. And I'm like, but what are you doing all this type of music? Because it was the music that I needed. It was the exact music that, I envisioned in my mind. And he was like, man, I have nobody to give it to. You know, Biggie's not here, and I can't give these to just anybody. And I was like, well,
he thought somebody who had Biggie's power needed it.
Yeah.
And you were the one that he thought worthy of it.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, give me all. I said, what do you do with this music? That's the best part. I said, what do you do with this music? He said, man, I just play it in my house, and I just run around with my socks on.
So you take it.
So I took these tracks. It's like 30 of them, by the way. It's 30 of them. Then I just start picking apart the best ones, and we just start working from there, you know? He didn't executive produce the album, but he was right there. I gave him associate producer credit, you know, and he was very instrumental in the album because he made the foundation to which all the other producers produce into. Because, you know, I would play it for the producers, say it has to fit in this. It has to sound like this. Sonically, it has to have this sound on it. And the great thing about Puff, what I really realize is he's a great producer. I've always known this, but it brought me back to that time.
Some people think that's what he does best. He thinks that's what he does best.
I think that's what he does best.
He does think that's what he does best.
It made me realize that he's not a good producer. He's a great producer. And he's produced Ready to Die and Life After Death and Mary J. Blige's album, Jodeci's album. And, you know, I start getting these tracks back, and I'm like, who's doing this? Like, you know, like and he's a director. He's like, it's like Motown over there in my studio. I got horn sessions. I mean, the things that he added after the lyrics was on it. You had to hear the bare tracks. The bare tracks were great tracks, but what he added after it made it a movie and made it complete.
And what was the relevance of Big? Because you and I can talk about him, and I know a bit about him, but what was his...
Such a charismatic, charming, incredible storyteller, likable guy. He's forever loved by hip-hop. That's it. It's Biggie.
Because?
It's just the way he was. His honesty, his brutal honesty, you know, black and ugly as ever. However, I stay Coochie down to the socks. You know, like he can do that. Like a Richard Pryor he was in that way, where he can make fun of himself, you know, and he was just such a charismatic person. And we've had that in common for a while, but we always was competitive with each other as well.
In every way, in fashion and music.
Music. We all in the same business. We're all in the same field. So we competitive, but friendly competitors even along the way. Like when he won a fashion award, you know, I sent him the presents. So we would send each other presents and things like that. Him? I would do stuff like I'll send him cigars and Patron on the red carpet. I make sure when he out on the red carpet, you know, somebody came and gave him some, you know, fresh Cuban cigars. No, I'm not trying to show him up. Really,
but you're not trying to top him in toys either, are you?
No. We more so just being competitive. Not even so I'm better than you, just better moves, like the execution of something.